Everyone, and Happy New Year. We have an agenda that hopefully you can all see on your monitors. Let me first check. Can everyone see the monitor that I'm displaying? Okay, and can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So why don't we go ahead and get started. The first item, as always, on our agenda is news from LibLime. In the call with Patrick this week, there wasn't a whole lot of new information other than Patrick said that they believe that they're about 90% done with Code Fusion. I've heard that number for a few months now, so I'm getting quite interested in what 10% isn't done. The Code Fusion group did meet on the first Thursday of this month, and unfortunately I didn't make it to the meeting. So I asked Patrick about it, and he said that that not a lot was going on that year. The Salina, Kansas Public Library has their own sandbox now, and South Central has their own sandbox, and Pioneer is waiting for some kind of approval for their sandbox. I don't know if that's on the LibLime side or the Pioneer side. And of those three, it seems to me that the only one who's done any testing at all right now is SCLS. They have revised their checklists. So those of you, which are Ben and Ann, if you have looked at the shared documents lately, you'll see that there's a whole lot of new testing checklists that start with Bibliovation rather than LibLime, and that's how you can tell that they're new. The other news about South Central is that they're still in process of doing their library system evaluations. According to the notes, they have one more site visit, and then they will do whatever they are going to be doing in determining what their future path is going to be. I suspect that that they, after investing as much as they have within Koha and LAK, that they probably won't move anywhere. They might get some new ideas on new features that they would like to see, but time will tell on that. Okay, the second item on the agenda is an LAK 5.20 update, and I probably shouldn't have called this an update since this is the first time I've brought this up, but Patrick said that they are expecting a production release probably in late March, April, May time period. So as I get information about what's being included in that version, I will definitely share it with you. I currently have access to the LAK 5.20 release notes. I haven't played with, I've read through it. I haven't transformed it yet into something that I can post on the wiki, but I will get that done before the next meeting that we have. So you'll have something to look through. There are new features, there are enhancements to existing features, and of course there are a lot of fixes that are identified. So once that's posted, I'll let you know, and you'll be able to start looking at what's already in there. I decided that it would probably be a good idea to go over some of the enhancement list updates and go through some of the research that I've been doing on these to share it with everyone and to either get additional information from you or even new ideas to pursue. I listed 5 of them here. And under 2 of them, I do have additional information in terms of looking at what currently is available in the list functionality. Some of it has changed since we started using Koha way back, but some of the things that are new currently aren't working for me, so I'm going to point those out as well, and also point out what you can do to help with some testing on that. So let me move over to the enhancement list. And I have gone through and added some updates to some of the enhancement ideas that are here. And I thought that I'd just go through the ones that I've been able to update and explain where I am with the research into those and where I think we'll be moving towards. The first one is the 2017-02, which is about searching. And the search idea that came in was, as you can see it there, about a left-anchored wildcard search. And I have done quite a bit of research on this. The first thing that I wanted to make sure I understood correctly was the term left-anchored. And basically, from what I've seen, is that in LAK, all of our searches can be considered left-anchored, since there is no left-hand truncation defined in LAK's indexing rules. The only truncation that in our wildcard search that is available for us is right-hand side truncation. So that is something that I decided I wouldn't focus on that terminology right now, and instead try to find a way that we can accomplish what is being requested in this idea. In my looking through pages of solar documentation and bug reports and answers from other solar people, I finally found a phrase called trailing wildcard searches. And I think that that's probably more descriptive of what we want. I'm still continuing with research. I've communicated with Ben about this particular request, and we're having a conversation offline. And I think what we're trying to do is refine this so that we get the right information into the spec that I'm going to be working on. In solar, it works a little bit differently than it did when we were using Zebra for the indexing. Solar has a lot of possibilities and a lot of capabilities. And I think that part of what I've discovered is that as we've been on solar longer, there's been more capability to define rules that we can implement so that we can get the searching to work the way that we want it to. Can you all hear me? Okay, so if you can't hear me, be sure to let me know. Okay, I'll try to speak closer to the microphone so that I can come through a little bit clearer. Are there any questions or comments or suggestions for research on this that any of you would like to offer at this point?
Hi, Becky. Hartford's had a little bit of back and forth with LibLime in the support center about this. And also we've done a lot of searches and playing around with the different functionalities within solar as far as truncation is concerned. So I can, there's there's more that we can take a look at, and you know, we can continue to look at stuff from behind the scenes. I wish I had, and I will free up some time in order to work on this, but we're a little bit shorthanded right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is the idea about having a print button added to the contents of page for list. And I again communicated with Ben about this one to make sure I was looking at it in the way that they were looking at it. And it turns out that I was. And once I started working through the list information, I started seeing that there were different options that were being added into the list functionality. Some of it is available in production right now, and there's at least one bug that I've found that I've reported that is really tricky to try and identify what the issue is with it. But let me move over to the Waldo production site and just go through some of the pieces that I have found with the list that looks a little bit different, at least to me. I'm going to start with what your public would see if they sign in, or if they're just searching at a regular public terminal and they are just curious as to what lists are there. In my discovery layer configuration, I haven't changed the terminology from shelves to lists yet. So what we'll be seeing on my displays is the word shelves instead of lists. You may have it defined as something entirely different in your configuration. When I go to my public lists, when I click on shelves right now, I get the public shelves only. And you can see that there are several that are in here. I can choose to view all public lists at one time, or I can click individually on a specific list. So I'm going to first show you the view all public lists. Okay, in the all public lists, the only thing that is added for you to look at is the title count for each of the different lists. You'll notice that some title counts are at 0. Others have real numbers in them. And at this point, there's no action that you can take other than closing this window. If you want to view the contents of a specific list, you can click on the list, and it will give you a list of the titles that you may want to view further. You may want to review it a little bit further. And in this case, you know, that action column has been gone, and there are 2 actions that we can now take on this one. We can print, and when you print it, it's going to format it. I'm not going to actually print it, so I'm going to cancel that, but I'll leave this screen up. And this does show the brief information about each one of the titles on the list. You can then direct this to your printer. If you want to, you can save this information to a Word document or whatever you would do normally for a print. I'm going to exit out of that and come to the second option, which is download. Okay, when I download, it's actually going to download it to my browser. And since I've already downloaded a list, I'm just going to open up the list that I had. And this one, I only had one title in it, but you can see the format of this for a download is the same as the print option that we have available on our public list. Okay, so as a person who comes into the library, they can look at the existing list, which I have open here. The one thing that they cannot do Okay, I'm just reading the comment here. Ben, is that you that's talking here?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. We'll get to the formatting probably after we look at the functionality. There are some pieces that are changing in the discovery layer in version 5.20 that may impact this, and I don't have any details on it yet, but I'll explain what that is in a minute. Okay, so as a regular patron coming in, looking at the database, searching for material and happening on shelves, pretty much all I can do is either look at a list, I can print it, or I can download it. In order to do more with lists, what you will need to do is log on, and I'm going to log on to an account that is just a regular student account. I don't want to have the super librarian capabilities to show you this. Okay, I'm now logged on. Let me get rid of that message. If I click on shelves, I now get a list that starts with a heading of public shelves, and as I scroll down, I have your shelves. With my shelves, I have the capability to either create a new shelf or to manage the existing shelves. For the public lists, I can view all of them. So let's go ahead and do that and mimic what we did in the non-logged on version. Okay, when we go to our lists here, we have a couple of differences that have not been there before, and this kind of, and maybe you've already noticed this, but I just noticed it recently and thought I would share it. But you can click on Send Shelves, and you can put your email address in. If your email address is in your patron record, which we hope it is, it will automatically put that email address in this field, and you can then send it. Now, what gets sent is the same thing, the same display that we viewed in the public interface. It just is that brief display of the record. Okay, so that's kind of a neat option. I kind of like that. And that's on the public list. Okay, on the other list, I'm going to first click on Manage Shelves, and you can see that in the Manage Shelves display that we also have options. We have Academy Awards that with 5 titles, and again, we can click on Send Shelf. And what I've discovered, and this is a bug that I've entered in the support center, is that when I'm logged on and I click on the Send Shelf, nothing happens for me. With the public lists, I can do the Send Shelf all the time, but at this point, I cannot do the Send Shelf when I'm logged on. And I don't quite understand why that's happening, and neither does Jane. So there's been a pivotal story entered for this particular bug, and as I keep finding out different things, I keep notifying Jane about them. However, in my shelves, you'll notice that our only action options are to send the shelf or to delete. So this is basically what I wanted to show you, that at this point, in the production version that we have right now, you should have the Send Shelf option that displays to you. What I would appreciate is if some of you, or even one of you, could do some testing in your own database and see if that Send Shelf will work for you for lists that you have created yourself. I've been trying to look for differences, and all I can do is duplicate the problem in other databases. I can't actually make it work. So that's what the list piece is all about. And of course, we can always create a new list, as we have down here at the bottom. To create a new shelf, you can approach it a couple of different ways. You can create a new shelf initially and determine what your title is going to be, then search the catalog and add those titles to your new shelf. Or you can start with a search in the catalog, do your search, select the items you want in your shelf, and then add them, I'm sorry, then add those titles, or I'm sorry, then create the list after you've selected the titles. It works pretty much, but the key thing to know is that right now our options are to send the shelf. We don't have the option to print or anything, so that makes it a difference. This is when we go through my account. Okay, as a staff member that is logged on, there is under the More drop-down a list link, and when we go into the list for this link, you'll see that we have a different kind of display. We can add a new list. We can look at public lists versus your list. And in your list, you can edit. In other words, you can add to them, or you can change a private type to a public type, or you can delete them. Now, I'm still logged on as my public person, so let me switch. Hold it. Let me go back to the public list first. Okay, when I click on the contents of the list, you'll see that I have limited options at this point in time. I can either create a new list, or I can add holds to existing lists. Now, I'm not sure that somebody would want to add would want to place a hold on absolutely every item that is here, but each item in this list gives the holds option, so that you could place a hold for a patron from this page. Okay, let me go back one. And you'll notice that we don't have any option here to send the list to us, and we don't have any options to print out the contents of the list. Again, this is a staff mode. Let me come back here to the list. And this is, I'm signed on as a patron still, as a regular patron. I'm going to show you the difference in the displays when I log on as a staff user. Okay, right now as I'm logged on, I have the public masthead showing. If I went to the staff masthead, this display would look different. And you would see that it's set up for the staff to use it. So what I want to do again is click on the More and then the List. And you'll see that we have additional options here. We have the same list, the same public list. We can choose to edit the list as a staff member that has the permissions to work with lists, or we can delete the list right away. If we look at an individual list, we have the same holds information. We can select all or clear all. So if we want to place holds on everything, we can select all. If we choose to place holds on individual things, we can do this. And we have buttons that allow us to edit the list and delete the list. Okay, let me go back one page, and I'm going to click on My List. And in My List, I have the capability to look at my list again, and I get to this page that's labeled Contents of All Things, which is what the enhancement idea was asking for. And it gives me again, the same limited options that we saw with the public list. We have the capability to create a new list, we can edit a list, or we can delete a list. And right now we're looking at the titles that are in all things. On this page, we don't have a way to print. We don't have a print button that exists here. If we wanted to print this page, we could do a Control-P and print through the browser. And that would basically give you a screen print of what you see on this page. Okay, the enhancement idea that is here is asking to have a print button added to the contents of page for lists. And I guess my question to all of you is, seeing the differences, and I know that you've seen a lot of screens in succession, and even I have trouble keeping all of them in the same order in my mind, but I was wondering if the desire to have a print button is still there. Obviously, what you can do in the public view is you can have a list sent to you via email. And the difference is that in the staff view of the list that you have, you don't have that option available. And you may want to think about this a while. We can come back next time we meet and have a discussion, or you can send me emails about it. But that's something that I would like to understand as to how you would like to use it. I am not certain of how the contents of page is being used currently by your staff. And if I had a better idea of how that was being used, that would certainly help me in figuring out how to write up this specification.
Hi, Becky. Do you want some info on that now, or do you want to wait a little bit and we can talk about it later?
A little bit now might help with people thinking about it.
I'll keep it concise. One of the things that we use the lists functionality for here is basically generating a list of materials that we're sending out to be shelved. And then we use that list to go back and check the work of our shelvers. So basically, it's a way of creating a quick impromptu list that we can add to, that we can put onto a clipboard and go and check the shelves.
Okay,
Simply
so
put.
you're using it as a shelf reading assistant, basically?
Right, it's part of our workflow. And I'm hoping my coworkers aren't cringing at my quick summary. I'm sure they can go into more detail about this, but we can, we'll flesh it out later.
Okay, that's good. That gives everyone an additional piece of information they can use as they think about it. I can understand why having the print button would be nice to have there, because you could print it. But then I think what we come to is the way that the format, or that the way that the information is formatted on the display. As Ben mentioned in his chat message, that the formatting is different in the discovery layer than it was in the legacy OPAC. And I don't have a sample of the previous print format. So Ben, if you have a sample of that, I'd appreciate getting a sample of it. Yeah. But I think what we would want is to be able to have, even if we're printing, we want to be able to have the list printed in a variety of different ways. I would think we would want them, you could list them alphabetically, or you might want to have them printed in call number order. So that is something that I'd like you to consider as well, that if we should have an option to sort in this so that we can sort in different ways.
Yeah, to put it really succinctly, the old way of the way that the list's formatted for printing out was 2 columns, and the column all the way over onto the right had the call number in it. So it was really easy to line up the information with the call number.
Mm-hmm. And when you entered the titles into a list, Did you make sure to enter them alphabet or according to call number, or were they just added as you saw more titles that needed to be checked?
That's a good question. I think that the process that we use for reshelving is that the books are put into call number order to begin with, and so as they're scanned, they go in as call number order. So it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. That said, I'm all in favor of what you say, the ability to click on a little button and say, sort this alphabetically by author, sort this alphabetically by title, or by call number.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion on this one? Sorry, Ben, I talked over you there.
Nah.
Okay, so I need some input from you on this one. The number 9 was about an API to work with 3M RFIDs, and this proved to be quite interesting because if you look for 3M RFID, you get pages that have European addresses on it. In the United States now, 3M has changed their name to Biblioteca, and it also continues to use the 3M name. So depending on which pages you happen to get caught on, you end up with slightly different perceptions of what's going on. The information in the support center in this ticket was Patrick's response to a question about RFID. And he did pretty much explain everything that happens. My understanding, even though I've never seen one of these reading plates, is that you can configure them for different capabilities. One capability that it has with the RFID is that you can place a stack of books on it, and each of the RFID labels would be scanned and processed at the same time. And what Patrick's suggestion here is to add a second or two space between reading the tags so that each tag gets passed as one tag instead of 5 tags scrunched together as one tag. So after I looked at this, I went to the 3M Biblioteca site and other sites. I looked diligently through all of these pages looking for a reference to an API to work with 3M RFID pads, and I could not find anything. I could not find a reference to any API other than an Innovative Interfaces Millennium IDA Status API. So I haven't contacted Bank Street yet, but I'm going to contact them and find out if they were told that there was a specific API by the company that needed to be added in, or if they simply saw this API and assumed that that was something that could be added for any system. Are any of you currently using the 3M RFID pads? I know that several of you are using RFID tags. Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming through chat or anyone opening up their microphone to talk. So I'll contact Bank Street, and once I get an answer, I'll add that to this update, and we can then discuss whether or not there's anything that we need to do. I also asked Patrick about this. I sent him an email and asked about this API and asked him when he is at ALA Midwinter in Denver in early February, if he could stop at their booth and ask them if there was any API that was needed. My understanding after reading all of the information is that there is not an API other than if you're using Millennium. Okay, let me scroll down to the next one. This one is from Berkeley, Boston Conservatory, and it's about placing a hold on a bib by a patron using the OPAC. And in the version 5.20 release notes, I did find an entry there that says it's now possible to make a direct link to a title record and bring up the placehold window. And it shows how the URL would be formed. The level of the software where this was added was 5.1908, which is beyond what we have in our sandboxes and our production sites. So I haven't actually been able to test this, but I wanted to add this information so that once we get a chance to look at 5.20, we'll be able to see if that actually is working the way that is desired, and if it isn't, then we'll know what we can do. Okay, thank you, Yamo. So this is probably a request that we can take off the list, essentially. Okay, let me go to the next one. Number 26. This is, I think, my favorite one so far in terms of doing research. I started by looking at the current indexing in the user manual. And I'm going to show you the user manual to show you that I found that there was one index that exists. It's called title, no stem. Oh, yeah, I don't know when the production version will be done. I haven't had anything. I know that they have, that LibLime has done backporting to the production versions of some features. And I'll check with Patrick and see if he knows when that could be done. I know that there were some that they identified that were definitely needed backported right away. This one I think they might have missed, so I'll ask him about that. Okay, back to the indexing piece. I saw this title no stem index, which somewhat intrigued me, so I decided to try working with it. Let me first go back here and say that the request is to have either a do not stem list or something else, because the word musicals in their system would bring up every instance of musica, musicale, etc. So I didn't use the Hartford database in my testing. I started with the Waldo Sandbox, and because this is a copy of another database, I went through and started, as you can see, did several different searches. When I enter just the word musicals, I get 7,480. Okay, then I decided to work a little bit with some of the different truncation marks. So I used the question mark, which is a substitute for one character. So even though this isn't being asked to do a no stem, it's being asked to look for musical or musical with one more letter on it. And when I do that, I end up with 27 results, which is far less than what I had before. Then when I use a specific index for title no stems musical, it gives me 17 results, and as I scroll through them, I see the word musicals in the title field on all these records. And in this one, the title field is both the subfield A and the subfield B. So that index works quite nicely. I know that that's something that you probably don't want to have to teach your students and your faculty to use. But I think that the truncation, since we get 27 with that and 17 with the no stem, I think that there's at least there are fewer records to look through than the 4,000 plus that I got the first time through. I then decided to try and test by using a question mark in the title no STEM musical or musicals. And with this one, with the no STEM musicals, I got 17 results. And when I searched for it, let me start this again. I get 20 results. So I end up expanding my set of 17 a little bit just by using that one mark of truncation. Yeah, I looked at that fuzzy searching capability as well, and that okay, I understand this, but what I'm trying to figure out is with this request, I'm wondering if it would be, if one way that we could ask for this to try and get additional not stemming, if we could add the no stem option to other search indexes, like the series title or publisher, maybe even the text. I don't know if that will work or not. I mean, I don't know if they can do that with the text. When I look at the indexing information, at the very top, we have text that will look at the full mark. So if we had a text no stem, I'm not sure how that would work or if that would fulfill what you would like. I guess
Becky.
what I'm asking, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I think that might be a good start. And the back and forth that I've had in the support center with, I think it was Jane that I was following up with, basically came down to, well, we just don't have a table that's set up for no stemming for those areas. So being able to set up a no stem table, the way that Solar works, that covers just about, everything, would be a pretty good start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we could then play with it and see what would happen.
Right.
For searching. What I would appreciate getting from anyone out there is which of these indexes you think would be the ones to try the no stemming on. The title one's already done, and we can see how that one works. Does it make sense for the journal title search? And I don't know if you use this one. Does it make sense to use that one, the notes? I haven't been able to get subject exact to work, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding what it's supposed to do. But I can get the subject to work. If I do a search in, oops, wrong tab here. If I go to the staff home, actually I have to go to the public masthead. And then go to the home. And if I then select subject and use musicals, this is supposed to only look at the 6XX fields. And I still get 3,554, which is less than the 4,600 plus. But theoretically, every one of these records should have a subject heading that says musicals, and there is. Now, this has brought up other questions in my mind. As you notice, there are 2 musicals here. And this, what this brings up in my head involves authorities. So and actually the same for motion picture music. And at this point, I don't want to address that because I need to think about it a little bit more and do a little bit more research. I think that one thing that I have noticed, especially with bibliographic records, is that when the indexing is done, it looks at the tag, doesn't necessarily look at the indicators. And if you're using LC subject headings, you would expect it to use the heading with the second indicator a 0. And it doesn't always work out that way. There may also be some that are 7, which means that it's from another source, or it could be a 1, which is children's headings, or other numbers. There's one also for Sears headings. So, so one of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of this is whether or not we want the indexing to be a little bit more specific for subjects in particular, and look at not only the tag, but also the indicators. And then ask to have the indexes limited to just the Library of Congress pieces. And if any of you use other subject authorities, we'd have to know what they are and define them so that the indexes could be created that way. I don't know yet if we can get to the indicator level. That's something I'm going to have to do some more research on. But that isn't the existing request that we're working for. I just wanted to let you know that this is leading to more enhancement ideas that I can come up with. So this is one that I'm going to continue working on. One thing that I would appreciate, let me see. Okay, Tracy, if you could help me by sending me some 1 or 2 of your examples so I can see how the truncation options are working for you and what you expect to find and what you actually get, because I would like to be able to add some examples into the spec that will be written for this one. I think having examples always helps with trying to explain a concept, and that's one that I think would help. Okay, let me go back to our agenda again, and that got us all the way through the enhancement list. I've already talked about the testing scripts for the Code Fusion features. I haven't added any of those to the wiki, and I will do that before the next meeting so that you can see what their testing scripts are looking like. And then under the number 5, which you've had commented out for quite a while, what I saw in the LAK 520 release notes is an entry that says, if desired, display item holdings and search results. I haven't been able to look at this yet. I do have access to LibLime's Bibliovation demo, which is supposed to have this in it, but I haven't had time to really do a lot of testing with this one because partly the reason is that the database is not one that I'm familiar with, and I don't know how items have been added. And I'm not exactly sure when I look at the results what I'm looking at. So that I need to do a little bit more research on. But at least that gives you an idea of where we are. Are there any questions or comments about anything we've gone over today? I will continue looking at the enhancement list and continue adding notes to everything. And when I get a good idea of how to work on or how to write a spec to try and make it as clear as possible, I will start drafting those and adding a link to those drafts from this page. Okay. Does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up today? Jason, I'll get in touch with you outside this call and work with you on that again. Okay, if there's nothing else, today's meeting is over and our next meeting is on January 25th. So we'll meet again then. Any ideas that come to you about any of the enhancement lists, feel free to send them on Waldo support or send them to me directly, and I'll add information to the list and we'll go from that. Thank you all. We're done today.